A nationwide Bharat Bandh today in protest against the new recruitment policy called Agnipath. The debate over the dramatic new military recruitment policy continues, and we're here to try and make sense of it as the government has made it clear that there will be no rolling back. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. Let's take you through the key developments of the day. There have been protests across India today. The stir against the Agnipath recruitment policy has now entered its sixth day. Mercifully, the protests have remained non-violent today. We have not seen any incidents of violence being reported from anywhere. Amid this, a slew of concessions have been announced, and the Army, Air Force, and Navy have also issued formal notifications for Agniveer recruitment to begin. But the question still persists. Has the government and the military leadership taken too big a risk? Or is this a risk that is in fact a military reform? Reform or tinkering with a system that one cannot afford to tinker with? That remains the key question on the broadcast this evening. And let me introduce our guest today. We're joined first by Utkarsh. Utkarsh is a young Air Force aspirant who took all of his exams, cleared many stages, and now is absolutely confused and scared. And I'm hoping that all our top veterans today are able to help Utkarsh and people like Utkarsh find their way and regain some sense of hope. Also joining us on the program today is Commander Sanjeev Kumar, KP Sanjeev Kumar. He has, of course, been a vocal critic of this policy, writing several articles that have attracted a lot of attention. He's been a former naval aviator. Also joining us on the program is General Dhanoa. General Dhanoa is also on record as someone who feels an anxiety about Agnipath and the disruption it may cause in the operating and social ethos, social fabric, as it were, of the military. Also joining us on the program is Air Marshal Tiwari. Air Marshal Tiwari, of course, is a veteran from the Air Force, and we're very glad to have him with us. And finally, somebody who has been on the inside tracks of the planning and preparation. Remember, the military chiefs have revealed that this has now been on and in the works for several months before it was revealed. General Raj Shukla, who's, of course, been the GOC in chief of the RTRAC, that's the training department of the Army Command Training. Thank you very much, General Shukla, for joining us. So a distinguished panel, and General Shukla, I'll start with you. We know a few things. We know that this is, at least as of now, the military leadership and the government have made it clear that there is going to be no rolling back of the scheme. Agnipath is here to stay. But at the same time, it is a work in progress. There are concessions that are being announced. There are new announcements that are coming every day. As someone who has been on the inside track of having been working on the blueprint, the draft of this for many months, because we now know on record from the military that this has been in the works for the last more than a year. Can you tell us how you look at the kind of pushback that Agnipath has received, and why you think, given the nationwide protest, that this is a risk worth taking?
Barkha, I must first correct you. I was not working on the blueprint of the scheme, but I was associated with certain parts of the scheme, and those issues I placed before you. But yes, as an army commander, I was aware of, the fact that such a scheme was in the offing. It was discussed at various forums. And I'll try and tell you, just give me 2 minutes to tell you why I am an advocate of the scheme. You see, and just few quick bullet points. In my view, there is humongous change through the national security landscape across countries across the globe. National security landscape. We somehow in India seem to think that the change is happening only in the civil space, in the civilian digital spaces, aviation, communications, energy. There is equal space change sweeping the national security landscape. In response, countries have been reforming, carrying out HR reform. They've been creating new talent pipelines. I'll give you some examples of the extent to which countries are going in terms of technological innovation, so on and so forth. And what is really worrying is what our northern neighbor is doing, China. There is humongous change. So do we wish to respond to this change dynamic? That is the first question. In my view, we should. The very purpose of CDS-DMA, it was not really about giving secretarial powers and all. It was to tell the armed forces that here you have a voice, you have a say. Now design, articulate, and drive change through the national security system. So it is a huge challenge. Agnipath is one of those steps, and it has three metrics. Now, the first thing I must tell you, this started off with some misconceptions. The first misconception was that the armed forces were not consulted and it was, dumped or pushed down our throats, which is not true at all. There was active consultation. I won't say there is agreement. There was total unanimity in the final metrics of the scheme because I left sometime in March. But there was very active consultation, things going up and down. So it is Agnipath actually encompasses reforms in three modules. And very quickly, one is in the recruitment module. Now, our recruitment module, as Dhanoa and all will know, we've been all in this together, is a rather archaic. It is based on physical fitness, medical fitness, and a small written test. Outside, there are huge changes underway. There is online, sifting, online screening. There is a matching of attributes of the aspirant with the needs of the army. So I would just like to posit that it is a sophisticated, complex process. So there is recruitment reform which is happening. In service training. Now, this is something that our track dealt with. And, like most of us, we've been in operational assignments, so on and so forth. We really don't take a deep look at training. I was aghast to learn that while most militaries in the world, the training period was about 19, 20 weeks, we were training in some of the technical arms for 1.5 years. I mean, you take a driver with a license and train him in training again. There are many resident capacities today in ITIs which have been further uplinked with Skill India and all. These technical capacities are available outside. So what is the optimization? If I can reduce 4 weeks in the duration of training and the money so saved if I invest in sniping simulators, AI platforms, blockchain, all this stuff, this is actually, so it is optimization of training. Now, the one worry was in the intake pattern, if you have improved, you will get the best. So it is from merely employment generation, it is a humble attempt to transit to talent maximization. So if you get good people, you train them well, and you re-enroll only 25% of the 100, you are getting the best of the best. Now that is a narrow army view. So the worry was about the Agniveers. What do they do? Are this future secure? A lot of that also was being planned. You see all these things which have been rolled out, open schools, recognition by IGNU, bridging courses. This could not have been done in 24, 48 hours. Over the last 2 to 3 years, the RTRAC has signed MOUs with MIT, RRU, MIT, IITs, IIMs. All this did not happen in a jiffy. So a lot of this was in the offing, and they have now been put together as part of this scheme. The last point I'd like to make is, see, I don't know whether this has been triggered by the protests and the pushback from the veteran community, but even that is for the good. For 70 years, what we could not do. As an army commander, I would plead with chief ministers. Ki saab 10 saal reservation hai, put some people in. Those vacancies were never filled. Today, you are getting vacancies 10% in police forces, Coast Guard. 7 chief ministers have tweeted. Ashok Leland, L&T, some Priya Industries. I am saying this is a golden opportunity to push this through. People say in the past we didn't succeed, so today won't succeed. I'll tell you why we'll succeed. Pehle, it was the armed forces pleading to the political class. Then these chaps go out. What will they do? And there was always some consultation between the politicians and the bureaucrats, and we were finally told, kuch nahi ho sakta hai. Now there is dual stakeholding. The armed forces are saying so. The political leadership has a stake on it. There are far greater chances of these things happening. So this is really game changing. And one last point I'd like to make, Barkha, see the scale of change. I remember it was around the second or third pay commission, General Sinha, one of our very respected generals. I mean, I've heard this from him. When he was in dialogue with the pay commission when in terms of equation, said that a skilled soldier is equal to or lesser than an unskilled laborer. Now, today you see what is going to happen with this national schooling, uh, IGNU accreditation, education ministry stepping in. The Agniveer, if we push this project with sincerity, with wisdom, with resolve, this Agniveer product is going to become a superior product, as is the case in many countries abroad. He will not have to beg for jobs. He will be sought after. So this is my
Okay.
large argument. I've just one, well, 5 seconds. Of course, there are disagreements. Many of these, the people on the panel, I respect them greatly. Dhanoa. So all the points that he's making, they are being systematically addressed. So whenever you have change, there will be pushbacks, there will be miscommunications, but it is my earnest plea that we should not lose this golden opportunity to change.
Well, thank you for those opening remarks and helping us frame our conversation, General Shukla. I have one question to you before I open it up for the rest of our panel. Um, you know, why not a pilot? Why not a testing phase? Why not a test bed? This is something that many have asked, and I think that maybe you're right. And, I take the point about dynamism, about the adversary changing tactics, I mean, go no further. Even if you watch the latest Top Gun, Tom Cruise is told by his boss that there will come a time when we won't need you guys, they'll only be the machines. But, our military is driven by the josh of its men, and now progressively its women, and not simply the machines. And therefore, I ask with all respect for an institution I love and I have spent my entire professional life reporting on, why not a test project?
So, see, a very valid question. So, one is, watching Top Gun is a good idea. But if you do a research on the capacity of the Indian system to push back and not let anything happen, you will not be an advocate of test bed. I'll give you an example of test bed. So, theater commands, we test bedded the AD command. What happened? The point is, it's not a matter of Agnipath, Agniveer. There is so much of change that we have to execute down this path. We just have to find a way of doing it. Otherwise, everything will be pushed back. Look at theater commands, a good example. You voiced the idea of test bedding. There was acceptance and there was pushback. So this is what is going to happen. So it is really not about Agniveer, Agnipath. The last point I wish to make is this. You see, if this scheme has the weight of the service chiefs behind it, three powerful service chiefs, the weight of the Raksha Mantri, the Pradhan Mantri, the Indian system, are we saying that we do not have the capacity to push any change through? That's my question.
Well, you have laid out a very optimistic framework, and I want to now open it up to all of our very distinguished guests. I'll start with General Dhanoa because we know him to be a critic. I'll come to the Air Marshal right after that. General Dhanoa, does General Shukla's optimism prove to be contagious, a little bit infectious? Are you feeling a little more reassured, or do you principally disagree with this idea of what some have called a contractual army, a transitory stint for the jawan, for the airmen, for our sailors? General Dhanoa, please.
Let me start with a small anecdote. I have known General Shukla since he was a cadet in the NDA, and he was about a year senior to us. And he was a fearsome debater. And there was no question that once he had got on to a particular side of a topic, that he was going to allow anybody else to have his say. So I think he's rolled out all the pluses that are there
I,
for
I, I think he's
the.
trying to. I think he's trying to make a brief interjection. General Shukla, go ahead.
I was saying Dhanoa is an even cleverer debater. He has taken out the substance out of my arguments. I mean, that's an right.
Okay, General Dhanoa, please go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
And we've had the opportunity of working together in the Army War College, so we know each other well, you know. But that apart, the fact of the matter is that the Agnipath scheme, as General Shukla was trying to say, is a part of a reform that is looking at the way things have changed in the wider military world. We've got neighbors who are also looking at reforms in the way that, especially our northern neighbor, in the way that future wars may or may not take place. Though, mind you, certain amount of inputs that we are getting from what's currently taking place in Ukraine is that you just cannot discount industrial scale warfare. But that apart, the fact of the matter is that there is a need to change the way we look at the human resource in the military. And to that end, Agnipath is a particular reform. I've always said this, and I've said this in my articles, I've said this on a couple of times when I've appeared on television before, that what you need to do is to look at it as the third or the fourth rung in a series of reforms. At the apex level, as General Shukla was himself pointing out, we appointed the CDS, and then we created the Department of Military Affairs. And we've also gone in for a certain amount of joint uh, integration, which is an ongoing project. I don't think it would be correct to equate theaterization with recruitment. But at the same time, we've now picked up one of the lower rung reforms, and we pushed this right through without even looking at how is it going to affect us 3 years, 4 years down the line. Who are the people who are affected by it? In the military, you're constrained after a particular time. If there is consultation which is bottom up, that you may voice whatever be your objections, suggestions, but eventually, once a decision is taken, everybody has to fall in line and make sure that whatever be the policy that's going to be implemented, that is done in the best manner possible. And I think that's some of the issues that General Raj Shukla himself pointed out. But there are certain issues. I mean, if you look at the reason why there are protests, and I am not for the protests in the manner they are in any way, but it also points to the fact that the army, while we look upon it as something in which you come and you have a passion to serve, but at the same time, people also look for a certain amount of security in the jobs that they are provided. And the government.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you because I want to understand from you, General Dhanoa. If you had to, there are, as General Vinod Bhatia, former DGMO, described it, there are intangibles to this, which is the character of the military, the ethos of the military, the loyalty to the Paltan, the romance of the uniform, the izzat of the uniform. And then there are the tangibles: operational efficiency, combat capacity, integration between the Agniveers and the full service jawans who are already there. Which concerns you the most, the tangibles, the intangibles, or both, General Dhanwa?
See, I am saying that all of what we have put down, either as the intangibles or the tangibles, none of it has occurred on the ground. So we are all speculating. It is fears. It is the fears of a particular community, and I refer to myself in the veteran community, that we are fully aware of the way an army functions. There are certain things you can say and there are certain things you can't say. Let me be very candid. Human resource, the talent pool that we have from which the military recruits is not the brightest. Okay, with full due respect to the young boy who's sitting in front of us. But there are other avenues that people look at first. And then eventually there is a certain class, there's a certain set of people who prefer to join the military. And they join it for a variety of reasons. Job security is one of them. Because it has been done so in their line of, the family is another reason for it. The fact that they are attracted to the uniform and the fact that it provides them, an adventurous life and gives them a certain amount of security is another reason for it. So you can't discount these things and say that because the natures of war may change, the character of war is changing. Therefore, we need to look at our way of recruitment. So those issues which we are worried about at the moment, a lot of them are in the future. And I've been saying this, that we need to be cognizant of the fact that things never roll out the way they are. I mean, after all, we are the military. We know that no plan survives first contact. Of course, what is the contact in this? There is no adversary in this. The adversary is just within the system. We have to make sure that we get the best out of it.
Would
So
you
all
have
I'll
wanted...
say is that while General Shukla looks at it with rose-tinted glasses, I tend to look at it with the more sense of realism. There are pitfalls in this system, and I think we need to address it. And if these get addressed, I've given certain suggestions. Increase the length of the contract, give them some kind of, either a new pension scheme or make sure that you're retaining a larger number. These are some of the issues that can be worked with. And therefore, we should be able to roll out a system which meets both the requirements of those who are all for the system and the others who are pointing out that there are certain challenges to it and we must be able to meet it.
So there's that category, and then there are those who are, of course, totally opposed to it as well, General Dhanwa. And yes, some of these points, whether it's the NPS, whether it's a 5-year tenure that would even get them gratuity, these are things that have come up. I wanted to go to Marshal Tiwari, but General Shukla, am I seeing you raise your hand? Go ahead, sir. General Shukla.
One point, you see, we must engage with the contrarian view. And I've read Dhanoa's articles where he has made some suggestions. I've taken those and I'm already in touch with the highest authorities. And I'm telling you, we will take care of them or we will do our best. And it is good that the army must have two views. I'm
Yeah.
also saying, I hope I've not been misunderstood. We must reinforce the tangibles, but be imaginative when it comes to the character of war. So perhaps he's voicing a concern, and I'm saying they are valid concerns. We must engage with them and embrace them aggressively. That's what matters.
Okay. Hey, Marshal, let me bring you in and then I'll come to Commander Sanjeev. Hey, Marshal, go ahead, sir. Your thoughts at the moment. One of the arguments against Agnipath, we've heard the arguments for, we've heard the suggested changes from General Dhanoa. One of the arguments against it is that you are breaking something to fix something that wasn't broken. You're shaking up something, as the cliche goes, don't fix something if it ain't broken. So why are we breaking this system as we know it at all? Marshal Tiwari, your view, sir.
Ma'am, it's not the breaking the system. If you want to move ahead, you have to take a risk. You have to move ahead. People are not ready to take a risk. Aircraft should not have gone to Balakot. Long back, but there have been ages, debates have been on, everybody should be army trained. Everybody should be given exposure. If I agree, if you all agree with me, this is a small step towards that. When you are going to train more people, more exposure for the defense forces, and whenever they come to any aspect or any other organization they join, they'll be more useful for the country. This debate, if you remember, for last 20 or 30 years, you always used to debate on. People never used to understood. Even the IS officers never understood about the military requirement. That was the requirement. See, this is the initial stage, initial step of giving and training, army training to the large number of people who are later on getting back to the civil services and other aspects are going to work. I'll just say few examples, ma'am. Major advantage of this, I'll come back later. Major advantage. We have got China and Pakistan, two front. Ma'am, we are capable of handling one front very clearly. Most of the country had got the reservists who are later on called upon to fight when the requirement comes. I don't think the situation will come, but if it at all it comes, think of the trained people who will have already there in the civil field who can be deployed, like Ukraine. Ukraine is running short. Even Russia is running short of their jawans. They are looking for reservists. Now think that if you continue with this step, this again, number of soldiers, number of airmen, number of sailors will be trained and who can be recalled at any stage. Now think of the stage. At 17 and a half years, we are taking a 10th school chap who is motivated. Now, before he goes to the college, before he gets spoiled by some other activities, he's already in the army. He's getting trained, motivated. After 4 years, he works, comes back as 12.
The problem is not that he's coming in. The problem is he's being made to go. That is the problem.
No, ma'am. I don't. Ma'am. I'll just now he comes back at 20 years. Chap comes 20 and a half years. He come back with the 10th. Now he has got for any service. He's got 2 years or 3 years, 4 years to prepare. After so much of a disciplined life, they will be able to clear more exams. Ma'am, I'll just say even the Air Force, airmen, every year find at least 3 or 4 of them clear for civil services exams. And they clear at much later stages, much later ages. After they reach about 25, 28, 30 years of age. Now they will compete and they'll do. There have been large number of civilian employees in all the headquarters. General Shukla will agree with me. Army, Naval, Coast Guard, all headquarters, large number of civilian employees. That needs to be filled by this. Over a period of time, if you go ahead, those vacancies will be filled by our Agnivids who are intelligent enough, will compete all the exams, and the relations between the civil and army and Air Force will boom up. It will, sorry, I cannot, okay. I'm not very prepared for this thing, but it will improve. It's a very nice step. Very nice step. It will have a pitfalls, ma'am. I'll tell you, it will have pitfalls, but it is just mechanism. Feedback, change, improve. Some mistakes, improve again. It's a continuous process. It's a continuous process.
I would like to
and say something about Air Force, ma'am. Especially about Air Force, ma'am. I'll tell you. There, the people are saying that technical, by experience, you gain technical experience, technical training. What you gain, you take much more time. But, ma'am, what happens? Like today, we have got non-technical and technical branches. We have got about 50%. Actually, 45% technical and 55% non-technical. Now, our take is 50. Out of 50%, 25% are getting retained. So there will be the most of the technical people who get retained. Now, at present, the technical people, out of which 30 to 35% are used for non-essential duties. And what
Yeah.
is major concern is the technical. So now people are coming at this stage. The we Air Force will should not run up in the problem. There is not enough technical airmen or technical
Okay.
Agnipins are there. But however,
Okay.
problem I tell you now, there have been children who have been preparing for last 2 years. They have been tested, and test of the Air Force is not easy, because Air Force test. Even I was one assistant chief of air staff. I introduced certain adaptability, such as psychological test, to test their certain psychological aspect which are only open for the officers. So all these people have gone on a difficult task. We should consider them. The Air Force or the Army should
And I'm
consider all
glad
the people for that.
I'm so glad you've made the point about the young men who have already taken the test and cleared them. Over the last few days, I've been talking to a number of these young boys, and really my heart goes out for them, because they kept getting chitti after chitti saying due to administrative reasons there is a delay. And we'll talk about them. We'll in fact be joined by one of them shortly. But I want to bring in Commander KP Sanjeev now, if I may, who has been writing very, very blunt articles, basically arguing, KP, if I may call you that the jawans, the sailors, the airmen are being penalized here for basically protecting the officers. You wrote this, you got backlash from some of your pals, so I won't underscore that point too much. But largely, you call this a bad idea whose time has come. Why?
The title of the article was "This is a bad idea whose time has come." But of course, the metaphorical use of that term, that you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, I had rephrased it in a different manner. Let me explain that. 35 years back, I was another Utkarsh who was there on your panel,
Yes. Yes.
speaking on the panel. I'm from an experimental batch. My batch was the first experiment done to have a regular 3-year course in the Naval Academy, and that's the photo that you're flashing there. Right. So I have survived that experiment. Our course had various experiments being run. The one thing common to that was there's nothing path breaking in the sense it was just a parallel scheme running alongside the regular schemes. So there was nothing radical about it. I'm sure discussions must have happened. There must have been people who were naysayers even then. But our course has succeeded, and it's doing very well. My problem is that, since anything radical, if you're doing something radical, it has to be looked at from all sides, right? I was very little critical about this. I mean, I was cagey about this in the initial days, but after the press conference and after I read the frequently asked questions, I was quite disappointed, because I'm seeing a lot of assumptions being made. That's what I'm not comfortable with. There's a lot of assumptions being made, and most of it are very generic in nature. They're not holding the bull by the horns. So when I look around the environment and I talk to people, I'm getting a sense that this is a kind of a virtual downsizing, if you may. We are unable to. Hence the title that tour of duty is a bad idea whose time has come. Because if we are not fiscally prudent, and we are going to have the pensions at the scale at which it is, or the salaries at the way. And I'm not for a moment, kind of griping about it, because we've got this after a lot of struggle. But then the affordability becomes a factor. So we are responsible for managing our own budget. The Navy has been managing it the best. The capital versus revenue budget has been managed best by the Navy. Now to come out with a radical change like this, it's based on a lot of assumptions. It has to survive the litmus test of, I would be the happiest person.
What is the assumption? What is the one flawed assumption that leaps out at you, according to you?
That this will be lapped up. This will be lapped up by the people who are going to sign up, and that's a big assumption. And that is because it is riding on nationalism more than reality. That people want a tour of duty. Okay, you ask a few people, you go around the country and ask a few people, everybody will say, "Oh, I would like to go." I mean, there are family days at sea. You attend a family day at sea and you survive a bad day at sea. After that, half of them won't want to sign up. So, assuming that people will just lap it up was the first biggest, I think, assumption. That now we have increased the numbers. Virtually, you're going to induct 4 times the number initially, and then let out 1/4 of that. So many people actually willing to come and sign up. And what I'm worried about is, will it still continue to attract the best talent? Because if it don't, there we have started off on a wrong foot. Because now we are going to now we have gotten to a difficult position where now you're incentivizing these people as they go out. Doles are being offered. How many of that will actually work and will be offered and will be accepted? I don't know. But now dole after dole is being offered. Now the balance, when it reaches a balance, I hope it reaches a healthy balance where the Agnipaths get resettled into society, and they're absorbed and they all get on with life. But if you incentivize that too much, then there is again a problem. Then the people who want to stay back will not be the ones you want, right? The people whom you are attracting should be the best ones you want. I'm afraid I'm getting mixed signals about this, and I'm just being a devil's advocate that there are a lot of assumptions here which are at work, which will play out in the next few days when we formally open the recruitment procedure and we get the.
Yeah, sorry. Why don't we do one thing? Let's hear from one such aspirant who has spent, even Marshal Tiwari referenced this, the last 2 years actually studying to join the Air Force to be an airman. Utkarsh, आपको मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
जी हाँ मैम आ रही है।
नमस्ते उत्कर्ष, आप जो हमारे पैनल है, इतने सीनियर ऑफिसर्स हैं, उनको अपने बारे में कुछ बताइए। आप कहाँ रहते हैं?
जय हिंद टू एवरीवन, सभी को मैं बताना चाहता हूँ, मैं कानपुर उत्तर प्रदेश में रहता हूँ। मेरा नाम उत्कर्ष तिवारी है और मैं 2019 में इंडियन एयरफोर्स का मैंने फॉर्म आया था, जिसको मैंने 2020 जनवरी में फिल किया हुआ था। और उसके बाद हमारा कोविड आ गया, कोविड की फर्स्ट वेव आ गई, तो उसके बाद हमारा एग्जाम नवंबर 2020 में हुआ, जिसका रिजल्ट सर हमें 26 नवंबर 2020 को मिल गया, विदिन 20 डेज। उसके बाद हमारा फेज 2 यानी कि फिजिकल और ग्रुप डिस्कशन वगैरह हुआ जनवरी में। उसके बाद हमारा इनिशियल मेडिकल जो कि फरवरी में कंडक्ट हुआ। उसके बाद हमारी सर जो प्रोसेस होता है उसके अकॉर्डिंग हमारी प्रोविजनल सिलेक्शन लिस्ट आई 31 मई को, जिसमें कि हम लोग फाइनली हमने अपनी रैंक सिक्योर कर ली। उसके बाद सर हमारी 10th ऑफ जुलाई को एनरोलमेंट लिस्ट आनी थी, जिसमें हमारी ज्वाइनिंग होती है, आप सभी जानते हैं। तो उसके बाद 10th ऑफ जुलाई को शाम को नोटिस आता है कि अनअवॉइडेबल सर्कमस्टांसेस की वजह से एनरोलमेंट लिस्ट डिलीट कर दी गई है, ठीक है। उसके बाद सर और उसके बाद फिर तुरंत नोटिस आया कि 26 जुलाई को हम एनरोलमेंट पब्लिश कर रहे हैं। 16 दिन बाद 26 जुलाई को एनरोलमेंट पब्लिश करने की जब डेट आई, उस दिन रात को 10 बजे नोटिस आया कि अनिश्चित काल तक के लिए एनरोलमेंट लिस्ट डिले कर दी गई है। सर ये तो हो गया। उसके बाद हर महीने उस 26 जुलाई के बाद से हर महीने से लगातार हमें अपनी वेबसाइट सेंट्रल एयरमैन सिलेक्शन बोर्ड पर हमें लिख के आता रहा कि ड्यू टू एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव रीजंस इन कंडक्ट ऑफ एनरोलमेंट ऑफ एयरमैन इज डिले एंड प्लीज चेक योर वेबसाइट्स एंड ईमेल्स रेगुलरली। तो हम अपना वेबसाइट और ईमेल रेगुलर चेक करते रहे। और उसके बाद सर 26 जुलाई का दिन है और 31 मई 2022 का दिन है कि लास्ट बार वो एनरोलमेंट के रिलेटेड डिले का नोटिस आया हुआ। उसके बाद 14 जून को तीनों चीफ प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करते हैं कि हमारे अभी सब अग्नि वॉरियर्स आएंगे, अग्निवीर आएंगे और पुरानी भर्तियां हैं वो कैंसिल हो जाएंगी। सर ये कहाँ तक राइट है? सर
मैं आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ, बिफोर द डिस्टिंग्विश्ड पैनल रिस्पॉन्ड्स टू उत्कर्ष, आपकी फैमिली क्या करती है?
मैम मैं बहुत गरीब घर से हूँ। मैं मेरे पिताजी किसान हैं और हमारी खेती भी बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है। हम रहते शहर में हैं, लेकिन हम पूरे गांव से जुड़े हुए हैं और हम लोग यहाँ पे छोटा सा हमारा घर है, उस पे रहते हैं। पिताजी हमारे मेरे पिताजी की आटा की फ्लोर मिल है, छोटी सी है और ज्यादा कोई बैकग्राउंड, हमारा फैमिली बैकग्राउंड बहुत अच्छा नहीं है। हम लोग खेती किसानी से आते हैं और हमारा फैमिली बैकग्राउंड बहुत अच्छा नहीं है। हम लोग फाइनेंशियली बहुत मजबूत नहीं है।
और अभी आप अपनी फीलिंग को किस तरह से डिस्क्राइब करेंगे? आप कंफ्यूज्ड हैं, आप गाइडेंस चाहते हैं? आपको क्या लगता है कि 4 साल, आपने 20 साल की सर्विस सोची थी, अब 4 साल की है, आप अभी भी करना चाहेंगे? मतलब आप क्या सोच रहे हैं?
मैम मैं कुछ भी कंफ्यूज नहीं हूँ। कंफ्यूज तो हमें किया गया है 1 साल से इंडियन एयरफोर्स की तरफ से। हम लगातार इंक्वायरी नंबर पे कॉल करते थे, तो उनके द्वारा बोला जाता था कि अब जल्दी इन्रोलमेंट आएगी और अभी कुछ हमारा प्रशासनिक काम चल रहा है, अभी हम आपको बता नहीं सकते, ये सब अंदर की बातें हैं, हम बता नहीं सकते, और जल्दी आपकी इन्रोलमेंट कंडक्ट की जाएगी। तो मैम हम लोग तो बस लगातार कॉल करते और यही पता करते, और हमें तो भाई कुछ पता चलने वाला नहीं है इन सब चीजों से कि क्या हो रहा है अंदर, क्या नहीं हो रहा है। बस 2 दिन बाद टूर ऑफ ड्यूटी का कॉल आता है कि टूर ऑफ ड्यूटी।
अब क्या करेंगे उत्कर्ष, अब क्या करोगे?
मैम अब तो हम लोग किसी लायक नहीं रहे ना, अब तो मैम आगे की प्रिपरेशन करेंगे और इसके लिए हम लोग सुप्रीम कोर्ट जाएंगे, सब बच्चे मिलकर। बिल्कुल मैम हम लोग जाएंगे, हम लोग का राइट है। जी मैम बिल्कुल जाएंगे कोर्ट। मैम बिना किसी रीजन के हम लोग का एनरोलमेंट कैंसिल करना, ये कहाँ का राइट है सर? हम लोग के साथ तो ये बिल्कुल अन्याय हुआ है। या तो
अच्छा,
आप हमें, या तो मैम एक मिनट बोल दीजिए, या तो हमारा मेडिकल ना लिया हो। अगर रक्षा मंत्री साहब बोलते हैं कि हम 2019 से इसकी बातचीत कर रहे हैं, तो मैम हमारी भर्ती ही ना निकाली होती तो हम दूसरे की प्रिपरेशन करके सेलेक्ट हो चुके होते अब तक। कहीं हमारा
जी जी,
मेडिकल ना लिया होता, हमें
मैं
प्रोविजनली
आपसे,
सेलेक्ट
अच्छा
ना किया
अच्छा
होता।
अच्छा उत्कर्ष, एक मिनट, मैं जानती हूँ आप अपसेट है। एक सवाल, देन आई हैव टू गो बैक टू द पैनल। मैं क्लियर करना चाहती हूँ कि आप उन बच्चों में से नहीं हैं जो सड़क पे प्रोटेस्ट के लिए उतरे, राइट? यू आर नॉट अ
मैम
प्रोटेस्टर।
मैं जी मैम, मैं एक भी दिन घर से बाहर नहीं गया हूँ। मैं ट्विटर पे लगातार वेटरन से संपर्क कर रहा हूँ कि सर हमारा प्लीज सपोर्ट करिए। जनरल जीडी बख्शी ने हमारे सपोर्ट में डाला है, और मैम कई वेटरन से हमारे सपोर्ट में सपोर्ट किया है। मैम हम बस ट्विटर पे अपनी आवाज उठा रहे हैं और लगातार अपने क्वेरी नंबर पे कॉल करके पूछ रहे हैं कि सर हमारा क्या होगा। बस मैम
अच्छा,
हम प्रोटेस्ट
अगर
प्रोटेस्ट
आपको,
नहीं होगा।
अच्छा, अब आप बाकियों की बात सुनिए। मैं एयर मार्शल से शुरू करना चाहती हूँ, सिंस ही इज एन एयरमैन एस्पिरेंट। एयर मार्शल तिवारी, आप शायद यही बात कर रहे थे कि एक वन टाइम concession can be given to those at least who have already cleared the exam, Air Marshal?
यस मैम, मैं भी ये सोचता हूँ कि कुछ करना चाहिए। मे नॉट बी द सर फर्स्ट बैच और सेकंड थर्ड बैच में विद एज रिलैक्सेशन देके इनको बच्चों को ले लेना चाहिए, ताकि जो ये नेगेटिव एस्पेक्ट, बिकॉज ये हमारा टेस्ट काफ़ी डिफिकल्ट है, पर्टिकुलरली एक्स ग्रुप के पीपल डेली स्लॉग करते हैं, बहुत मेहनत करते हैं। एंड आई टेल यू मैम, हमारे पास जो एप्लीकेशन आती थी तो ये 95% से ऊपर बच्चों की भी आती थी। एंड हम लोग 75% से कम पाने वालों को तो हम कॉल लेटर ही दिया करते थे।
जी
This statement I used to make it in front of secretaries also. You can appear for civil service exam, but you will not get a call letter for ethos. बट
right.
जब से ऑनलाइन टेस्ट शुरू हुआ तब से ही लोगों के 60% वाले भी लोग आने लगे। टेस्ट डिफिकल्ट थोड़ा किया गया। ये हमारे बच्चे बहुत अच्छे होते हैं, मतलब एयरफोर्स का लॉट। जैसे क्वालिटी की बात करें तो कमांडर साहब की वी नॉट गेट द क्वालिटी, वी टू गेट अ वेरी गुड क्वालिटी, दे नो डाउट अबाउट इट। बट यही है कि हमें थोड़ी प्रिकॉशन पहले ले लेना चाहिए था। जब हमें आइडिया था ये करना था, ये झटका इनको नहीं मिलना चाहिए था। इंस्टेड ऑफ
ये
कंटिन्यू द मेरिट लिस्ट, कंटिन्यू एनीथिंग।
ये झटके की बात मैं जनरल शुक्ला से थोड़ा और समझना चाहती हूँ, बट आई जस्ट गेट जनरल धनोआ टू एड अ पॉइंट बिकॉज देन वी आर स्टैकिंग अप द क्वेश्चंस फॉर यू, जनरल शुक्ला। जनरल धनोआ, you said that, you know, one has to keep sort of tweaking this. What is the most important tweak that is necessary? And of course, this young boy has now said he's going to go to court. I think we should be prepared that there are going to be a set of petitions. The Supreme Court may well not entertain them and say, hey, this is a national security issue, it's best settled by the military. I don't know. But you are going to see some amount of litigation. I think we have no doubt about that. General Dhanoa, your thoughts?
Okay, straight away to the issue of this young aspirant. I feel that there is no choice with the government but to take them for the terms and service conditions for which they had applied. You cannot now shift them over to the tour of duty. That's my personal view. And I feel that if they go to the Supreme Court and they're going to be fighting this, that's probably the line that the courts are going to take. Okay. You cannot now say give them an age relaxation and let them appear again. They've appeared, they've cleared everything. They were waiting for a letter, and because of whatever reasons, the Air Force took a decision not to call them. So I feel that they should be called, and based on the terms and conditions for which they had applied in 2019 or 2020. Okay. Coming back to the issue of, what is that one tweak? Firstly, I feel that there are a number of tweaks, but if you were to ask me that one thing, I think this length of 4 years is something which is too short. You need to increase it. I've been giving suggestions, make it a minimum of 7 years. We used to have 7 years color service earlier, where a person could then go away with the pension. People are being very miserly, saying we'll have to pay him gratuity moment he touches 5 years. Then there are legal implications about, what is his medical facilities that we'll have to give him. He'll ask for it for the rest of his life, etc., etc. I mean, those are stupidities, if you ask me. You want to maximize the talent that you have picked up, or do you want to make sure that you're not paying out? And that's the other problem with the scheme. Yesterday, when the second press conference took place, and the people who've been working on this, they expressed the reasons for why we've had to go in for this. They made it very clear that it has nothing to do with the burgeoning pension bill. It has everything to do with lowering the age of the military, especially the army. It's very funny, 2 years ago, there was a lot of hue and cry when the then CDS had made a statement that we are actually going to increase the age at which our NCOs and our senior JCOs and some of the men are also going to retire. They wanted to increase it for certain trade. They wanted to increase it for certain services. That was 2 years back. So between that and now, what is it that has changed that we have suddenly stuck to this 4 years?
Okay, let's take a number of these questions and points to General Shukla. Commander Sanjeev's point that the assumption that everybody is going to respond positively, the angst of a young man like Utkarsh, and so on. Many questions, sir. General Shukla, go ahead. Sir, you're on mute, sir. General Shukla, can we unmute General Shukla, please? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So let me first respond to Utkarsh. I saw Barkha, I saw the longer show you did yesterday on many of
Yes,
these aspects. And I
yes.
must admit it is sordidly painful. And I really don't know what to say. I mean, the Air Force would know the nitty-gritties, but we definitely owe an apology to Utkarsh and people like him. Partly it happened because of the pandemic. The pandemic did intervene. I know that many of those recruitments, and partly because the scheme was in its final stages, but it does impact him. Of course, he has the legal route, but if he were my son, what would I advise him? If he were my son, I would tell him it's unfortunate, but forget that legal route and all. Go to the Agnivir scheme. Go to the Agnivir scheme. Maybe you will profit in the long run. That is my personal advice to him. You can go into legalities. You may win the Supreme Court judgment and all that. But I mean, I would admit that this is something that should not have happened. Now, see, in this whole story, there will be these poignant moments where of these human stories, and it is bad. But when you take this wide-angle view of the whole thing, the point is, I mean, see, Dhanoa also has been saying this, that we must right size. Everybody says right size. Now, how do you right size? We are given the example of the Chinese. I've had this detailed study done in our track. How did the Chinese downsize? They downsized by simply sidestepping to their police forces. That's it. They didn't downsize. Everybody was not on the road one fine day. They
Yeah,
sidestepped to the
I would
police.
like to comment on this. No, Jan Shukla, we're not going to get away with that easily.
Yeah, yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
yeah,
General
please.
Shukla.
Okay, so we cannot compare the Chinese system with what we have in India. We are a raccoon democracy, and even if the military functions, independently at times in its policies for recruitment, etc., we cannot simply be sidestepping men from the Indian Army, Navy, and Air Force into the police forces the way the Chinese have done. So we can't really take the example of the CCP. The PLA owes its allegiance not to China; it owes its allegiance to the CCP. So we got to be very clear on that. And then there will be no dissent within the entire chain of hierarchy which is there in China. The consequences can be pretty grim. Uh, the other thing is that if you are right sizing, what are you right sizing for? Have you got a national security strategy in place? I know Jan Shukla is
Okay,
going to turn around and say, yeah, those who need to know, they know. But at the same
okay,
time, do the armed forces actually have a national security strategy and the missions that they're working towards?
let, let
We
him,
pick up, like I am saying, that it is a reform in the right direction, provided the other steps are being taken.
okay, General Shukla, please
So
complete.
that's exactly my point. Look at the change which has occurred. The creation of CDS-DMA, defense coming out of the shadows of foreign policy, uh, the startup defense. This whole Atmanirbharta is just not an empty slogan of self-reliance. It is unleashing the forces of civil military fusion. Now, when you say don't quote copy examples from abroad, I say fine. What are the Chinese? Oh, okay, let's not mention the Chinese since that annoys Dhanoa. The point is, uh, are we be smart enough to pick the best practices from the globe and tweak them to the Indian terrain, to the unique Indian genius? And if you don't want to copy anything, create a system of your own. Now, my argument is that if you do not want to follow the Chinese, we ourselves have been arguing for years about sidestepping to the police forces and all that. We've been arguing for years. I know. I can show you documents, pay commission
Yeah,
persuasions. So my whole
Just
I
one
have a
point
minute, a
is,
question.
moment. I
I
just want to make, I want to make this point about the sidestepping to other forces. The army is not a pipeline, and I don't agree with what Air Marshal Tiwari also said, that we will be giving a lot of people training. Uh, we don't need to do that. The other CAPFs and others are very capable of training the people for their requirements. We have to first look at maximizing the effectiveness of those who come in for the Indian military. Right. Okay. Secondly, we cannot be at the same time saying that we are taking the best practices from others and we are tweaking it to Indian conditions. The Indian conditions are very, very unique, and therefore you need to have people who are available for a longer period of time. That is the Indian condition that we need to look at.
Can I just jump in here, General
So,
Shukla?
yeah.
Yeah.
See,
Sorry,
now
before
let me just let me finish my set of arguments, and then we
Yes.
listen to one of them,
Yeah.
and there'll be a fine debate. So,
Yes.
what is the way that you right size? The way of right sizing, the reality, Indian reality is anybody in service, he can't be thrown out. So you calibrate your future recruitments. So it's going to be a fine process. For example, when the army gets 40,000, it is going to get broken down. It'll come to about 15, 20 people per battalion. And as you go along, you vary these numbers. Simultaneously, there are some, what shall I say, sunset professions and sunrise professions. So some of those have to be done away with, and those people have to be moved into these emerging domains of space, cyber, EW. I mean, much of this is happening. So there is a lot of thought behind all this. There is going to be calibrated downsizing. The third point I want to make, it is not about penny pinching. This is also a misnomer. It is an attempt to carry out these multiple transitions, which is difficult. And if you also save pensions in the process, where is the problem? The point is that, when you nitpick on all these, see, there has to be trust in this reform. There has to be trust in this reform, or while we should be open to all kinds of questions, there has to be trust and belief, or this will not go forward. The last point I would like to make is sometimes we underestimate our own capacity to change. I'll give you 2-3 examples. So I'm a very proud NDAite. NDA is a major contribution to the officer cadre. But over the years, it has got challenged, say, by the technical entry scheme. Now, what is the reform we need? The technical entry scheme is challenging the NDA entry in terms of deliverables. The point is that NDA, now I've seen this as GOC in CR track, when you ask NDA to reform, it says that we have no need to reform. Will this manifest in a problem in the future? It will. Look at the women entry. I've been arguing for long that let's look at the women as a talent pool. And
But look at how incrementally you did that, sir. Look at how incrementally women were actually brought
so
in.
I'm against that. I'm saying look at them as a talent pool. And look at, I'll give you the experience. So when they came to OTA Chennai, since that was under our track, we were told they will not meet this condition. I was amazed myself. They have exceeded every physical parameter. Today, apart from contact sports, which means boxing, they are doing everything with the males and perhaps doing better in many domains. But I was privy to all the objections which happened. So I'm saying sometimes we underestimate our own ability to change, and we are surprised by the positive effects of the change. Similarly, RR, Rashtriya Rifles, there are a whole lot of examples. Startup defense. Do you know who's the primary beneficiary of startup defense? Most of these startups, they are lieutenant colonels, wing commanders, squadron leaders, because they understand what the defense needs. Sameer Joshi has got a contract of 100 crores. Barkha, just 1 minute. 100 crores. Has it turned around his life? I go to Turnbow Imaging. There is a Havaldar from the Armored Corps. There are 2 Havaldars from infantry, 1 Havaldar from artillery. So I'm making this plea, this persuasion for civil-military fusion. When these animal spirits are unleashed, you will see what happens. So that is my whole plea about this. And at each stage, I am, with great humility, I'm prepared to take every argument that Dhanoa says. I don't matter any longer, but I will have it conveyed to various.
No, of course you
matter. It's not a question of what I am saying. I'm only reflecting what I feel is the wisdom
legitimate,
of years of having served.
Can I please
come in? I just want to ask you one question.
Can I just allow?
I'll ask General Shukla one direct question.
I must compliment you on the quality of the debate. These are the debates which must happen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I will ask you a simple question. You come from a field regiment SP. They've got the latest K9, right? Yeah. Would the commanding officer of that regiment be very happy if 50% of the turnover of the men on that system was to take place every year? And I'm being generous. Otherwise, it's going to be a much larger one. You can counter that argument by saying, but it's going to be a graduated increase. And therefore, by the time it actually comes to the larger 50%, they would be quite adept at handling it. But the fact of the matter is, when you have gunners who are training for the K9, would you prefer to have somebody who's got 8, 9, 10 years of service on that system, or would you prefer to have somebody who only knows how to pick up the round and then put it into the carousel?
So, Dhanoa, the transition is going to be so gradual that pehle it will be 1 gun detachment out of the 18, and you will never allow it to exceed 50-50. The CCS note says that this is a broad concept all changes, tweaking, modifications are left to the Raksha Mantri and the service chiefs. So this is all that
Then
is happening.
I would strongly recommend, sir, that one of the issues is that instead of making Agniveer the only particular entry for all three services, we need to run both schemes side by side. That's a sincere plea.
Okay, can I ask KP to add a question, and then we're almost at the end of. I have literally 2-3 minutes left, and Commander Sanjeev, sorry, you've not been able to make
No,
your point, and I can see. Commander, please go ahead, and Utkarsh, 1 minute. Commander, please go ahead.
Okay, so you see the challenges that we have placed in front of a potential Agniveer. He has to go through a selection process which has been described by Air Marshal, which is very tough, all the three services. Then he'll be on a probation period of 4 years, where he'll be the day he steps into the scheme is under the scanner. He's going to be competing every single day for those 4 years. Then after that, then he has to get another selection process, which has to be fair and transparent, right? To get selected into the 25% who are retained. At the end of it, if he gets selected, good. If he doesn't get selected, he has to now go and apply to all the quotas that have been provided, and then he has to undergo another selection process, which involves what metrics we do not know. After that, when he joins there, he's again going to be joining at a lower rate. Now, when a person leaves after 4 years, does he want an upgrade or not? Is a simple question. Does he want, or does everybody want to become an entrepreneur? When you leave after 4 years of experience, Skill India and Make in India, Atmanirbharta, all are fine. But do you expect all of them to go the entrepreneurship way? Is it going to be an upgrade? If it's going to be an upgrade, I'm very happy with it. If there's a healthy intersection of the individual's interests and the systems and services interest, then we have a win-win situation for all.
I'm going to give the last word to General Shukla, but with everybody's permission, Utkarsh, मैं आपको एक sentence, I think everybody agrees जो आपके साथ हुआ है वो नाइंसाफी हुई है. General Shukla ने तो आपको apologize किया है, and he hopes it will be resolved. आप बहुत संक्षेप में कुछ कहना चाहेंगे, Utkarsh?
मैम, मैं जनरल शुक्ला साहब को बोलना चाहूंगा कि सर वही प्रोसीजर दोबारा तैयार करना, इससे अच्छा होगा कि मैं दूसरे प्रोसीजर को तैयार करूं जिससे मैं परमानेंट 60 साल तक की नौकरी पालूं, अपने घर वालों को संभाल लूं. और सर मेरे अंदर एक इंडियन फोर्स की निगेटिव इम्पैक्ट बन चुकी है और अग्निपथ की निगेटिव इम्पैक्ट बन चुकी है. सर मैं एक वर्ड यूज करना चाहता हूँ, सर हमारे साथ फ्रॉड हुआ है, सीधी बात है. मैं सॉरी बोलता हूँ इस वर्ड के लिए, लेकिन हमारे साथ फ्रॉड हुआ है, मैं सीधे यही बोलता हूँ. सर रक्षा मंत्री ने और इंडियन फोर्स ने हमारे साथ फ्रॉड किया है.
ऑलरेडी उत्कर्ष सब बोल चुके हैं कि जो आपके साथ हुआ है वो ठीक नहीं हुआ. जनरल शुक्ला खुद बोल चुके हैं, एयर मार्शल तिवारी खुद बोल चुके हैं, धनोआ साहब बोल चुके हैं, कमांडर बोल चुके हैं कि आप जिन टर्म्स पे आपको लिया गया था वो टर्म्स ऑनर होने चाहिए. आई थिंक ये सब बोल चुके हैं. आई विल जस्ट गिव द लास्ट वर्ड टू जनरल शुक्ला विद दिस question of mine. The data shows you that ex-servicemen have not actually been able to enable the quotas that already exist for them. You can see these startling figures in the Business Standard today. Only 1.6% of over 22,000 vacancies were filled across 32 central ministries. And you know these figures, General Shukla. So why are we optimistic this time that these quotas will actually work as they're meant to? And if you'd like to add any last comments.
Yeah, so see, I'll tell you why I'm optimistic with this. See, the whole argument is of what? The whole argument is of, one is legislation versus trust, legislation versus intent. So in the previous paradigm, and I don't wish to cast any political aspersions, but in the previous paradigm, there was 10% reservation. As I've told you, I've battled it out with chief ministers. They said, hai, lekin kuch hoga nahi. Why was it not done? All the QRs were cleverly tweaked to keep the armed forces out. Kehte sahab available nahi ek district mein qualified. And to keep whom out now? The people who deserve the reservations the most. The infantryman, the man from the armored corps, artillery, the combatants. They were all cleverly tweaked that if at all the vacancies came, they went to the people from the support services and so on. That was the history. So a clerk got a vacancy which should have gone to an infantryman. Now is the big op. And why did it happen? The lone pleader was the services. The implementers, which is the political class and the bureaucracy, were on the other side. Today you have dual stakeholding. The highest political leader and you are on the same page. You are saying that this must happen. The pushback, in my view, will be less. And we have a far greater chance of this.
At the risk of butting into General Shukla, he doesn't like to be interrupted when he's summing up. I know it from experience. But all these are, issues which will come up in 2026. When the first set of
before he starts, sir, can I interfere? Just one thing.
Okay,
I,
you're
I,
both.
I, sir, I will.
One second, sir.
I'm
Yes, sir, I
getting
told you,
my
sir.
point. I'm
Eight
interrupting
minutes.
you.
No, no,
You're
sir.
all speaking together. I can't
Sir,
tell who's
retirement
speaking.
age.
So
Sir,
all
because
I'm
I've did a
saying
lot of
is that
research.
what
No,
we
sir,
will get
Dhanoa
to
sir, एक
know.
मिनट, please listen to me, sir. About retirement
Yeah,
age, sir.
ज्योति,
Retirement age,
मैं बोल
people
रहा,
used to
मेरे को आप
retire
बोलने
at 30.
दीजिए.
एक
Yes,
minute.
sir.
May I?
I'm adding up to General Shukla's point. General Shukla's point. What the question Barkha has asked, I'm going to answer that question only. Okay, why it has not been filled? Because the retirement age, people used to retire at 37, 38. Ma'am, and the upper age limit for the central government other services was 40. So they never got even one or two chances. I took up this case to enhance it by 5 years. Because this was made when those people used to retire at 13 years, 14 years. The age was the criteria. That's why the vacancies are not filled. However, in the Air Force, people are preparing, and there even one chance they should get selected. Now it happened in the army. Now people, if you 4.5 years, there's enough time to appear for that. And I'm sure Shukla sir, even the political what he's saying, sir, but I still it was
See,
basically for the
20,
opportunity that they didn't have.
2026 is the
Opportunity they didn't
earliest
have.
that you will get, and we have elections which come up in 2025. Make your own assumptions.
24 actually elections.
Okay, see,
Okay, General Shukla,
Barkha,
yeah.
can I just say
Yes,
two things?
yes, sir. I have to
Very,
close
very,
after
very
that. So can we have this be the last word? I'm sorry. Yes, General Shukla. Yes.
not the last word, but I just want to make 2 points.
Last one
See,
just
where
for
does
today. We'll have
yeah,
many
where does
more
my
words as we go along. Yeah.
sir,
Yes.
see, where does my
Please.
optimism come from? I was DGPP when the CDS DMA was being created. CDS DMA. The night before, all these arguments were there, and it was said we don't need a CDS. The CDS cannot be created in India, and it will just not happen. And I don't know what happened the next day, but you got CDS DMA. More than integration, you got DMA. In my view, and Dhanoa is the authority. He's done a course in US. I haven't. It is more powerful than Barry Goldwater Nichols. Having got that, what did we make of it? And see, the question mark is on the higher leadership now. Are we capable of executing change? It is military leadership. Therefore, we have to pass these tests. And just one last point, let me descend from 50,000 feet, come to ground. I just look at 3 hypothetical scenarios. If the scheme starts doing well, the SP in a small district, say Derabasi, he finds that amongst his amongst his lot of constables, the Agniveers are doing the best. And why should they be doing the best? They have come through a trained system. They have gone through some training. And I'm not talking of just crude military attributes of motivation, all that, very important. The degrees that they are going to get, they will be recognized for their military attributes. They are going to get, formal education in economics, business, Bimkana, this, that, IGNU, backed by the education ministry. If all this becomes a reality, that Agniveer product will be a superior product. The SP will go to the MHA and say, "Mere ko agle usme dijiye." It all depends on the success of this program. All I'm saying is that in its current form, it shows great promise. And I do understand where Dhanoa comes from, because I've also seen that 60 years of disappointment. But today जो फिजा है वो बदलाव की है, and it depends on the wisdom of the armed forces not to come up, be needlessly oppose things. See where your interests lie and take them to their conclusion.
General Shukla, I have to close with that optimism, and with the hope that your optimism is what is true, and the skepticism, the anxieties of the others are misplaced. That is what we have to hope for the sake of our military, for the sake of our nation, for the sake of our of our future. But it has been a riveting conversation. We could go on. I'm sure there's going to be a lot to unpack in the days to come. Just a small shout out for people like Utkarsh. Their words may be strong, they may sting, but they've gone through a lot of pain. So I hope we can maybe raise our voices, at least all of you with all your collective clout, to raise your voice for those who've already cleared the exams. I think that could be one more concession that could be looked at. In the meantime, my gratitude to Air Marshal Tiwari, to Commander Sanjeev, to General Dhanoa, to General Shukla, and to Utkarsh. This isn't easy to have a civil conversation about. Tempers sometimes do run high, emotions run high. Everybody feels very strongly about the uniform, including me. So thank you. It's been an honor, a pleasure, and I'm grateful to all of you for your time. Are you trying to say something, General Shukla? I'll unmute you. Give me a second. Go ahead.
I said, me and Dhanoa must return for a debate in 2026 on your show.
No. I was thinking next week. So I'll call just the two of you, and we'll do that soon. Thank you. KP, you trying to say something?
I'll be 66 years old.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think war is too important to be left to the generals. I just have this to say: if you listen to more voices at Utkarsh's level, and you have your ear to the ground, and we don't live in a fantasy world and make so many assumptions, we would do better than this.
All right, the jury remains out. We've had every shade of opinion, and we've had it from the ground all the way right to the top, KP, which is how I think we must always do. We must listen to voices at every level, and we continue to do that of every dimension. And what I like is that General Shukla said up front that we are going to engage with every opinion, and long may it be that way, because that is the spirit of both our democracy and our military. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you to our audience. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.